I want to turn your attention now to the stabbings in Nottingham. Do you remember those? Only 18 months ago, heading towards 18 months ago. And Ian Coates lost his life. He was a 65-year-old. But also, I mean, and that was a real tragedy in and of itself, of course. But I think what particularly hit home was these two beautiful teenagers, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Barnaby Webber, who lost their lives in that stabbing. Absolutely appalling to see these two young lives snuffed out. Anyway, the mother of one of those teenagers, Barnaby, has branded an episode of Panorama as shameful.
She's Emma Webber. Her 19-year-old son, Barnaby, was killed last year. And she says the families were not properly consulted about making the Panorama at all.
Yeah, well, it featured an interview with the killer's family. And that's raised, some questions about the way it was put together. However, I mean, it's salt in the wound now. It's been nominated for a journalism award. However, it's Scoop of the Year.
Which
Doesn't that just seem distasteful?
Totally. Joining us now is Emma Webber, and a very good morning to you. And before we even start, just seeing you, our profound sympathies for what happened to Barnaby. But can you tell us what your main worries are about this Panorama? What's your real problem with it?
Yeah, we've been. I'm speaking on behalf of all three families. We actually met yesterday with our legal team who are supporting us. There's so much, but we're concentrating on Panorama. We understand the freedom of press, the freedom to report, and the importance of particularly investigative journalism, especially given the enormity of what's happened to us and the failures. But with this particular programme, it's where to start, where to end. They didn't consult with us in any way, shape or form. They didn't inform us that this was in the making. And we were told, just to give context of dates, on the 26th of July, I received a phone call from Navtal, who's the lead journalist involved on this. So the 26th of July was the first time we'd been told that it was happening, and it was due to air on the 12th of August. And it was already in the can. It was, as Nav told me, it's with legals now, and Emma, going to answer all of the big questions. It's a great piece of journalism. And, of course, naturally, there's so many things that we've got concerns with and failures that we were hopeful that it would address more than what it actually ended up addressing, which is the failings of the Mental Health Trust in his care over quite a few years. That information was all already in our want anyway, because the CQC report had come out, which is the urgent Section 48 report that was done into his care, and the NHS England independent investigation is due out, and it's being worked on at the moment. So we knew about a lot of this. But as soon as I asked why we weren't involved in it in any way or informed, we were pretty much told, well, you had your say when the BBC did The Big Cases, which is an extended news piece that aired in January and was filmed throughout the end of last year. And then they dropped the bombshell that, actually, people speaking for the first time when I asked who it was, of the Callacane family. And I think the penny dropped then that. And the fact that it's now gone on to have the word scoop is they had the scoop of getting that family to speak for the first time. And of course, again, as much as I don't like it, they have a right to speak and to be heard if people want to listen to them. But there were so many factual inaccuracies and omissions that what was portrayed was a very imbalanced and sensationalised, we believe, piece of programme making. And we've gone down the route of complaining to the BBC. They've behaved appallingly and continue to behave appallingly. We're having automated emails saying that there's a lot of complaints coming in at the moment, and this will be addressed in due course. And they've now got until Tuesday. I think the 20 days is up, where we need to have some form of response, which we're not hopeful for. So we are going directly to press complaints.
I mean, it's very difficult, Emma, isn't it, in all of this? And I mean, heck, no one would envy you your position. But it's that whole business of of trying to tell all sides of the story, but in that way, what cannot be forgotten is what sensitivity needs to be placed around you and the families of Grace and the families of Ian Coates as these absolute innocents in this horrific crime.
Yeah, we are the surviving victims of this, but like you said, two beautiful children almost were slaughtered by somebody who we do not believe was so diminished in his responsibility and his illness that he didn't know what he was doing. So there's so much, as has been widely documented, we're having such a fight. And the last thing that I feel we should be dragged through is this, with the response that I got back, or our lawyers got back, from Karen Whiteman, who's the editor of Panorama, sort of said that they felt that there was a portrayal of the failings wreaked upon Valdo Callicane, his family and us. And I find it a huge insult that we're grouped together as potential, victims with that family. I mean, they've destroyed everything. And the detail within the programme was so flawed that it's given a portrayal that isn't balanced, and I cannot understand why where was the duty of care to at least inform us prior that this was happening. They wouldn't let us see the programme before it aired. They wouldn't even give us level of detail. And so to then be made aware over the last couple of days that the Press Gazette have nominated them as Scoop of the Year, it's painful. It feels distasteful, which is probably the word I could use on air. That this is my beautiful boy that didn't stand a chance, and nor did Grace, and nor did Ian, and so many failures, not just by the mental health trust, but by two police forces at least, have failed us with all these missed opportunities. And that's not journalism. That's just gratuitous, sensationalised portrayal of.
It's what you said. You are the living victims, and it seems to me, it seems to so many really experienced television journalists that I know and who are backstage here behind us. They cannot understand why you weren't informed, kept fully informed, because it just seems to so many people that you've had to fight for justice, and you have actually been denied a lot of justice all the way along the way, right down to how the court proceedings were taken against Valdo Callicane, to his sentencing, and now to the way the media is portraying it. It seems that you're still having to fight for justice, and you're the living victims.
Yeah, it feels, Anne, that it feels as though everywhere, everything, every opportunity, all of the reports, all of the investigations, all of the alleged professionals and decision makers have failed. And without us constantly fighting and picking everything apart, and thank goodness we've had the offer of support from the legal team we've got, because none of us would be able to mentally, emotionally or financially do what we're doing now, where we're hopeful for a statutory inquiry. So, those that have failed, the professionals that have failed, the medical professionals, the legal professionals, will be held to account and will be compelled to give full disclosure. We on the back of this Panorama programme, our lawyers reached out as the Callicane family had offered. They wanted to help. Apparently, they want an inquiry as well. They readily shared medical records and details with the press, with the Panorama team, but they stonewalled us in us taking up on their offer to provide us with information so that we can help to understand and heal and make sense of some of this. But the mum's a registered nurse. I do not believe for a single second, none of us believe that she didn't know her son had that illness. She tried to intervene in a number of his 4 sectionings. And I think that the family have questions to answer, but I'm not on a witch hunt for them. Can't have any sympathy for them, unfortunately. I don't have that in me. Maybe I wish I was a better person, but what I do want is answers, and I do want accountability, and we all want this to begin the beginning of the closure. So we want the answers. We only have our truth. We've got nothing else. And I hope people don't think I'm coming on constantly onto the TV to whinge and moan and can't let it lie. But I would say to anybody who's a parent or anyone who's got a loved one, imagine what we have to think about every night when we get to bed and what happened to our boy and what that monster did to him. And, you know, all of the questions that haven't been answered about his alleged drug use, about his connections with gangs in London, about all of the prior unprosecuted assaults on students, on other innocent people, including a month before the factory workers that he assaulted, where the Leicestershire police did nothing after they attended the scene. We have to live with all of that, knowing that Barney, Grace and Ian should still be alive. Had all of people done their jobs.
There are a lot of questions to be answered.
Still.
We are out of time, but I'm not going to let you go without, because that picture of, and as someone who lived and worked and was a student in Nottingham myself, it was so shocking. But that picture of all three, if we can bring that back up, absolutely haunts me. And this is the first time we've talked, so I just want you to tell me, just briefly, who Barney was.
Oh, he was everything. He was challenging, he was naughty sometimes, he was funny, but he was kind, and he was the most genuine person. He was loving his life, and he was living his life, and he loved that city, he loved that university, he loved the friends he'd made there, he loved the sport, he adored cricket, and he loved his family, and we love him, and we miss him so much that I don't think there's any words that could ever convey how much that boy is loved and missed. But what we will do is we will get justice, and we will get accountability. And it isn't a witch hunt. It's if you fail at such an egregious level as some of those doctors and police officers, and in our opinion lawyers did, and doctors, expert doctors, they must be held to account, because you know it will happen again. It has happened again. But if there's some way that we can have our little bit in our country to create more safety for Barneys and Graces and Ians and all of their families, then we will do that, because that's one thing we can do.
And
excuse me, sorry.
We understand it entirely.
Emma, just to remind everybody watching right now, is that those three beautiful people were killed in the most savage way you can think of, and yet Valdo Callicane was charged with manslaughter and admitted manslaughter, and was allowed to go as manslaughter, when it very clearly to any human being was more than that.
This is an individual that had a rucksack full of weapons that he had put together over many, many months. He prowled, he chose his victims, he hid in the shadows, he chose people that had no chance of defending themselves, and it wasn't a rageful, it was a calculated, savage, monstrous attack. He wasn't in the throes of some great seizure or episode. The eminent Dr. Nigel Blackwood, who ironically is a CPS expert witness, said that he was in an extended period of psychosis for the entire time. He managed to complete his university degree a year before, in a 2-1 in mechanical engineering at Nottingham, but he was still in his episode of psychosis then. The reason he was calm was because he was in psychosis. The reason that he had attacked others was it's just making it fit to make it go away. And Callicane is a patient. He's not even a prisoner. There's no penal element. Yes, they say he's likely to be indefinitely detained. He won't be unless we make him the next Ian Brady. Because as his brother already said so painfully for our son Charlie to hear at the end of that Panorama programme, he's responding to the medication in his hospital, and he's got his brother back now. And the fact that Panorama allowed that to go in, and the fact that they ignored our request to put a disclaimer when we asked them to make it obvious, or make it make the public aware that the victims' families have not been involved in any part of that programme making. They just ignored us. They didn't even have the courtesy to respond to that one. Wes Streeting wrote to the Director General of the BBC with his concerns when he found out a week before that this was airing and that we hadn't been involved. You know, that there's no duty of care to us, despite what they say in their right to reply statement. And I can't believe that that's our BBC that have done that to us. You would think that Panorama would have learned from past mistakes.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, that's obviously it's my opinion, and I appreciate people are entirely due and reasonable to have theirs, but they haven't lost their son in, like you say, such an awful manner that haunts us every second of every day.
I'm sure it does.
But we will fight on, and we won't let these wrongs not be righted, because we at least owe him grace and Ian that.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate you talking to us, Emma. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I really appreciate you giving me your time. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, just heartbreaking.
Well, as you can imagine, we have contacted the BBC for comment, but they are yet to respond.
But on the issue, they have previously stated that we have the deepest sympathy for the families, and the Panorama team have been extremely mindful of the sensitivities in handling of this programme. They've been in contact with the bereaved families to tell them about the programme and provide details of its editorial focus. This investigation, which is very much in the public interest, examines a decline in the mental health of Valdo Calacane and asks whether there were systemic failings. The documentary has been produced in accordance with the BBC's editorial guidelines. Any complaints will be looked at according to our complaints procedure, which at the moment is sending an automated email out to the family. I think she said Tuesday. Is it this Tuesday? Mm-hmm. It will be the 20 days when they should get a response. Let's hope they do.
I think they should be seen to do better, don't you? Anyway.
It's just talking to her that way is just heartbreaking.
It is.